We have a special treat for you today. We're doing an exhaust system for a 2019 Ford Mustang V8. Ever since we worked on our first Mustang years ago, I finally understood why Americans love this car so much and why they keep buying it in droves, and why we love working on it too. For the price that you pay and per amount spent versus horsepower you get, it's very, very hard to beat what a Mustang will give you. For an let's say for an intake, it's about $600, $550. For the same intake on a Subaru, you'll get about 10 is a lot. For that same amount of money, you get 25 on a Mustang. Same thing with the exhaust. The last Mustang that we did was for autofocus. It was an older one, it's a 2013. Exhaust alone, we got an amazing 50 horsepower more. So it's probably one of the reasons why this owner saw that video and say, hey, can you do it to my 2019 Mustang? And the answer is, of course, definitely yes. And I'll walk you through the exhaust system of what a V8 car looks like. From the top here of the engine, there's really not much you can see. It's dominated mostly by the intake here. Then this thing is the intake, and this whole thing is the intake manifold, the big 5.0. This is just the engine cover. The exhaust starts actually here. It's very, very hard to see. There, that little slit. Those are the headers over there. Okay. This is the header. There's two of it, left and right. So a better view is we lift up the car. Take a look at it from underneath. Okay, we're under the car, and this is the header itself. This whole thing is the Mustang header. Starts from up there, goes down here. This is the catalytic converter here. There's two of it, left and right. Then this is what they call the Y pipe. This is the center silencer. If you hang around Mustang forums enough and Mustang groups, they normally replace this with a thing called an H or an X pipe, which is basically two pipes connected by a short pipe here that makes a letter H, or two pipes that have an X in the middle. That's why it's called an X pipe. They basically both do the same thing. Then after this one, it goes to another Y section here at the back. Then these are the two mufflers right here. Oh, it's a whole system. Of particular note on this Mustang, it has an active exhaust, meaning that you can see this part here. There's a servo motor here. That's a servo motor. What that does is it turns a flap inside this exhaust pipe finisher. You can see there's a flap inside. There's a switch inside for controlling that. There's a horse button on the steering wheel that selects the active exhaust. So if you want to hear more horses, press go horsey button. It opens that flap and gives you a better exhaust sound. So what we're going to be doing on this one, we're changing out the headers. These are the long tube headers. This is the long tube headers that we're going to be putting. Long tube headers are the best headers you can get for a Mustang because of the pipe length here. We'll show you in a while the theory on why it works. We're changing also the mid pipe here on the Y section. We will, however, be keeping the stock silencer in the middle because he doesn't want it to be that noisy. We're also changing out the mufflers to Borla, and we will be keeping the active exhaust valve because that cannot not be there. If you do happen to have a Ford Mustang V8, the 5.0 liter one, you actually have two choices of headers, a shorty header and a long tube header. Go to any of the sites that sell Mustang stuff, you will invariably find these two. Just to illustrate, a shorty header is by its name, short. And a long tube header by its name is long. Now, obviously, the next question is, which is better? And why in the world do they exist in the first place? Okay. To find out why, we have to take a look at what the stock Mustang architecture is for the V8 engine. By the way, the shorty versus long tube is only applicable to up to about the, I believe, 2014 Mustang. It's because of this. This is your V8 engine. This is the stock header. There's a flange here that bolts onto a catalytic converter here on both sides. Then there's a Y pipe here, Y pipe there, and goes there, mid silencer. Okay. You can remove this part and replace it with a shorty header. The stock header actually looks like this. It's made of a stamped steel and it's pretty much like that. The short tube header is made up of, as much as possible, equal runner tubes. So this one is made because in America you have emissions regulations which theoretically you are forbidden to remove the catalytic converter. That's according to the California Air Resource Board, or CARB. So it's illegal for you to remove that. The long tube header, you can buy this, you can put it in, but there's always a disclaimer when you buy these things that it's only for racing and off-road use, not 50 state legal. But obviously that doesn't prevent people from buying it in the first place. The long tube header, what happens is instead of just replacing this first part, which is the shorty part, the long tube header goes all the way down here. And then there's the Y pipe. Now, as far as price goes, this is normally around $500 to around $700. This thing is anywhere from $1,000 to $1,500. So basically twice the price. And horsepower-wise, you're pretty much getting twice the power. Why? Think of your exhaust headers as roads. Four roads, this is the distance between of the road, and then it suddenly becomes four-way, becomes one-way. Versus there are cars coming here. You don't need any kind of engineering or math degree to know that the cars here will travel faster than the cars here. And that's how the exhaust makes power, because you increase the exhaust velocity and flow. That's why long tube headers make more power than the short tube ones. And since we already have the long tube header, which we're going to install on our Mustang, the next component is the Y pipe, mid Y pipe, and then mid silencer. Then this goes to another Y pipe, then this goes to the mufflers. Hang around the Mustang groups enough and you will also notice terms like this one, what we talked about earlier when we showed you under the car: H pipe, X pipe. What that simply means is we're replacing this silencer with a section of pipe that looks like an H or a section of pipe that looks like an X. in detail, it looks like this. There is a pipe that joins these two primary pipes together. The purpose of that joining is to equalize the pressure in both banks, both left and right banks. So the exhaust note is more pleasant and more consistent. Whether it's an X pipe or an H pipe, they actually both do the same thing. Their job is to equalize the pressure. It just sounds fancier. And if you want to be really OC about it, the X pipe theoretically provides a little bit better flow because gases flow better at this angle than at a 90 degrees angle. This has better flow. But somehow they'll still meet in the middle and still cause a little bit of turbulence. So it's, for me, basically it's a scratch. It doesn't really matter what you get, if it's an H pipe or an X pipe, it doesn't matter. Then as mentioned, our Mustang has active exhaust. What that simply means is that in the muffler that it has stock, they have two exhaust pipes out here. One pipe has a valve, and then there is a motor here that turns that valve closed or turns that valve open at the push of a button. There's a button on the steering wheel with a little horsey symbol. So apparently that's what's used to activate this. And once, if it's closed, obviously it's a little bit quieter, and once it's open, obviously it's a little bit noisier. And then yes, there will be slight power increase between the valve open and the valve closed. This system we will have to retain and incorporate into our Borla mufflers. And we will make this functional because it's kind of stupid not to do so. And it's not exactly very hard. So the way to do it is that we have to cut this part out and re-weld it to the Borla muffler. We are still cutting it where the original welds are, so in case you do want to go back to stock and to original when you want to sell the car, we can weld it exactly where the same place where it used to be, and it will still look stock. Not much of an issue there. And you can sell the Borla muffler separately. So let's go back to the header install and see if it's done, so we can compare side by side what the stock header is versus the long tube header, because it's better to see it in person than me drawing it here. Okay, now we have the stock header finally out. It takes almost one whole day to remove just one header of the Mustang, and then this is the stock header right here. This is the catalytic converter. This is the rest of the pipe. This is the long tube header. Easiest way to see here is that all the bolt holes line up. So this is to that, that is to that. So this thing will simply bolt onto the engine block, and then this will come to about here. We are going to have to make a separate extension pipe that goes from here to the stock silencer up there. We will also put a flexible section here to isolate this header from engine vibration and the rest of the exhaust. Now, of important note is this one. There are two oxygen sensors here. This is the primary sensor, and this is the secondary sensor in the catalytic converter. These two will have to go back into the long tube header. This is for the secondary sensor, and for this one we will have to put the primary sensor here on cylinder number 1. Why cylinder number 1? Well, it's a good representative of what all 4 cylinders do, and there's 2 of it in the Mustang, so one on the left, one on the right. Now the question is how to get this back up, because it's a very tight fit. Okay, we have one header installed. It's on the passenger side, so this is it over here. So, as you can see, it's a pretty tight fit. It's a 4-1 long tube header, and then what we did here was we connected to the stock slip joint here. There you go, here. This is the stock slip joint where the header connects, so we're still using the same connector. So if ever the owner does want to put it back to stock, he can just unbolt the header. We did not modify the stock header, we did not cut it. It remains as is, and you just keep that. In case you do want to sell the car in the future, you can put it back to stock and then sell this off separately, or just as a bonus, give that to the next owner that you want. Hey, it's a modified Mustang, but here's the stock parts just in case you want. And the most important thing is, like here, we don't cut this. This is original. This is all original. That's the original slip fitting here. The pipe basically just slips inside there and then clamps tight shut here. We're gonna do the same to the other side here. So we'll make a S section that will slip into this mid pipe with the silencer. So this one will keep. Okay, while the headers may be a bolt-on, the muffler's not exactly quite a bolt-on, because it's a one-piece design all the way from the silencer up to the two mufflers. It comes in one whole piece. So this one we already cut here, and then what we're going to be doing with our Borla muffler is going to be using a slip joint similar to what we have on the header. So it'll slip here, and then there's the clamp. It's going to clamp here. It's a bit. I gotta force this sucker open. Oh, there you go. Yeah, it's gonna slip here and it's gonna clamp there. So to preserve that stock look. If ever they do want to return it back to stock, we kept this original weld line here, so that will match up to the original weld line of the stock muffler. So it can be put to stock if ever. We just have to re-weld it, and it will still be on the same welded area. So looks wise, it's gonna be indistinguishable whether it was cut or not. Okay, we're here with our very, very nice 2019 Mustang header and Borla muffler install. And this is the power we got. Red dotted line here is the stock power. It peaks at around 430, 433 horses. This green line is the header and the muffler install. Peak power rose slightly to 446, but the big gains is here in the middle. This is about 50 horses right there. This is about 40 horses right there. That's another 40 here. So torque also got pretty big in the mid-range. So that is from 320 to 380. That's 60 foot-pounds more. So there's a lot of mid-range SEPA on this car with the long tube headers and the muffler. We didn't do a full exhaust on this one because the owner didn't want it to be absurdly noisy, so we kept the mid silencer. even with the silencer all, it's actually still very, very loud. So, but at idle, it's actually pretty quiet. So I think it's pretty okay. We're not gonna wake up any kapitbahay at night if we're driving down. Just don't floor it from the get-go.
Ini manual man.